Wow, I knew that I was right to divorce you back then. No thank you to taking care of a parasite in a wheelchair.
My name is Yoshiko Unoue. I'm a 28-year-old regular adult. The story begins by rewinding about 1 year ago. At the time, I was working at a regular company as a regular employee, nothing special. I had the dream of someday having my own company, and in order to make that happen, I was working hard every day. According to others, I was apparently the cool type that would be popular amongst other women. In other words, I wasn't exactly girlfriend material, and there weren't many instances of men approaching me or asking me out. However, one person appeared who seemed to take an interest in me. His name was Toru Yamamoto, and he was the same age as me. We met through a mutual friend that I went to college with. To be honest, he wasn't exactly my type, although at the same time wasn't not my type either.
If you'd like, would you like to go out for dinner sometime? This is a present for you. I hope that you'll accept it from me. I bet whoever gets to be your boyfriend would be the happiest guy on earth.
In this way, he was pretty persistent in his pursuit of me. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't have much experience with any men chasing me like this, and so it wasn't hard to make me feel excited by it. As a result, one thing led to another and the two of us started dating. The relationship was pretty steady, and by the time 1 year had gone by...
Please marry me. I swear I'll make you the happiest person in the world.
Yes! 100 times yes! And so, the two of us were happily married. We finished meeting each other's parents, and our marriage certificate was officially sealed. Due to my work, we decided to postpone the wedding until the following year, but first we looked into getting a house together. However, 1 week before the two of us were about to start our newlywed life together in our new home, the greatest misfortune befell me. One day, I was walking home from the train station after a long day of work, when suddenly... a car had blasted through a red light and ran me over. I later found out that the driver had fallen asleep at the wheel.
I just got on the airplane. Are you okay?
I'm so sorry, in the middle of your business trip.
What are you saying? Don't be silly. How are your injuries?
They said that there's no risk to my life.
I see, that's a huge relief. When I got the phone call from the hospital, I honestly thought my heart was gonna stop.
They finished all the tests already, and my treatment is over.
I should be able to be there by nighttime tonight. By the way, where are you hurt?
My upper body was surprisingly mostly unharmed, but it looks like my legs are done for.
What do you mean done for?
I need you to calm down when you read this, but for the rest of my life, I will probably be in a wheelchair. Yes, although I was lucky that my face and my upper body were relatively unharmed, my legs in turn were fatally wounded. According to the doctor, there was a possibility that with enough physical therapy, there could be a chance for a recovery, but that I should be prepared to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. My company didn't have employment opportunities for people with disabilities, and the building itself wasn't accessible. Because of that, I was sure that I was going to have no choice but to quit my job. That being said, I was always planning on leaving my company to set up my own, so in regards to that, I wasn't too upset about it, all things considered. However, the real problem was Toru. After those messages, he was nowhere to be found. I wondered if something might have happened, so I contacted him multiple times, but he ignored them all. I didn't want to assume the worst, but it turns out I was right. One day, a brown envelope was sent to my hospital room. What? Inside of the envelope were divorce papers. Toru had already filled out his side, and all that was left to do was for me to fill it out and submit it to the city office. Besides that paperwork, there wasn't even a letter or anything else in the envelope, and in a completely one-sided attack, I was cornered into a divorce. Of course, I tried to reach out to him multiple times, but to no avail. Like a teenager running away from his part-time job, I couldn't believe that he was running away from our marriage like this. However, even though I tried to contact my in-laws, the result was the same. I couldn't get a hold of them. This could only mean that, as a family, this was their answer. But there was no way that he could entirely run away from me. I already knew where he works and where his office was. If I wanted to, I could show up there at any point. I wanted to, but my body wasn't exactly in a state where I could freely move about outside yet. In the end, all I could do was stay silent and do exactly as he wished. My parents were by my side, and on top of the devastating news that I would have to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, wheelchair, my spouse had run away and disappeared from me, and they were crying hysterically at my misfortune. But despite standing at a crossroads of my life and having divorce papers served to me in such a dark moment, I didn't take the matter to court. Luckily, we hadn't started preparing anything for the wedding, so that was okay, but the apartment that we had already rented for the two of us to live in wasn't something we could retract. The contract fees, as well as the deposit that I had fronted, all turned to dust. However, the car accident was a clear result of the driver's irresponsibility. On top of that, I was left with a major injury that would leave me in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I ignored the battle against Toru, but that was a different story from my battle with the person who put me in this state. In the event of a spinal cord injury, the standard is the payment of multiple damages. Because I became a quadriplegic, I would meet the criteria for grade 1 of lifelong care requirement. The loss of mobility in the lower half of my body, and the fact that I would require third-party care for the rest of my life, going to the bathroom, bathing, getting in and out of bed, or in and out of my wheelchair alone was going to be a difficult task. In the event that one qualifies for grade 1, it's possible to get a maximum of $280,000 from the defendant, according to the lawyers. On top of that, the salary that I should have been able to earn, but due to the accident, I would no longer be able to receive, I could also be compensated for that. Future nursing care costs, the cost of all equipment and appliances, renovation, costs for accessible housing, in multiple respects, including the claim for damages, I was going to be able to collect quite the sum of money. Even then, I would never be able to get my body back, and I was left with a disability for the rest of my life. Once the defendant would return to the real world, they would be able to go back to their life with a normal body, and while there was no way to place a value on that, this was the only way to somehow bring justice. I won everything in court, and I was able to receive the entire sum in my lap. My parents did absolutely everything they could to support me and renovated their house to be fully accessible. We hired a caretaker to help me with my everyday life, and I was finally starting to find a rhythm in my wheelchair life. Right around that time, I got a message from my best friend from college, Kozue, who was also the person who introduced me to Toru in the first place.
Yoshiko, I heard that you were in a car accident. How are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, luckily, I'm still alive, but I'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
No way. Are you serious?
Unfortunately, it's the truth.
I see. That's really tough. But I'm sure with your husband by your side, the two of you will be okay.
About that, he divorced me not too long ago.
What?
I guess he can't look after a disabled person.
What do you mean? I can't believe it. That's awful. But I'm the one that introduced you two. I'm so sorry.
Not at all. You have nothing to be sorry about, Kozue. It's my own fault that I couldn't see through to his true colors.
Anyway, I'll do whatever I can to support you. I hope you can stay positive like the Yoshiko I know.
I was comforted by my best friend, and slowly started to feel like myself again, and I decided to leave that guy in my past and forget about him. Despite now having a disability, my parents not only spoke to me and interacted with me normally, but they also started studying to become caretakers. I may have been unlucky in my relationship, but it made me realize just how lucky I was with the family that I had. 2 years went by since the shocking insanity of the accident and my divorce. I turned 28 years old, and I am still happily living with my parents in their accessible house. But that doesn't mean that I'm just hanging around doing nothing. Like I mentioned before, I was starting preparations towards launching my business. I'm currently working remote from their house, and I'm making a decent salary. I was starting to think that I could rent an accessible apartment and maybe live alone when I got this message from Kozue.
Long time no see. How have you been?
Really has been a minute. What happened to you? I stopped hearing from you out of nowhere.
I'm sorry. I've just been so busy.
It's fine. Are you doing okay?
Of course I am. Plus, I think I finally met my true happiness.
Your true happiness?
Actually, I wanted to let you know that I'm getting married.
Really? Congrats!
Thanks.
What's he like?
He works for a pretty decent company, so I don't have to worry much about the future.
Well, that's great. But what's his name?
His name is Toru.
Toru? He has the same name as my ex-husband? That was the first thought that crossed my mind. Surely they just happen to have the same name. It's not like it's a rare name or anything anyway. But whatever the case, I was happy for my best friend that she was going to get married. I genuinely wanted to celebrate and was very excited for her, but... You can bring your wheelchair right over here. We've designated a space just for you.
Thank you very much.
I was impressed that this church was fully accessible and admired the beautiful venue. That being said, when I thought back to 2 years ago and that it could have been me standing at the altar at this very moment, it was a strange feeling. As per tradition, the groom was the first to walk in, but... What? If we weren't in a church, I probably would have raised my voice much louder. That's because the person who walked through the door in a tuxedo was none other than my ex-husband. It was so sudden that my mind went blank, and without thinking, I dropped my head into my hands. Within the attendees were many mutual friends and acquaintances between Kozue and myself, but my wedding was done without a ceremony and before I could send out any invitations to those people, so I imagined that most people didn't realize that this groom was actually my ex-husband. There was nothing that I could do except to be stunned all alone and stare at the altar. Next was Kozue's grand entrance. Obviously, Kozue knew that Toru and I had gotten married. Not to mention that the person who tied us together in the first place was none other than Kozue herself. Even then, to play dumb to me all this time and drag me here on purpose, I couldn't wrap my head around it. As Kozue walked down the aisle, our eyes met. In that brief moment, without saying a word, a devilish smirk flashed across Kozue's face. I see. I don't know the reason for it, but I did understand that she had some kind of grudge for me, and only invited me here out of resentment. After the ceremony, there was a little bit of time before the reception, so I decided to send Kozue a message. What is your point in doing all of this? Don't you think that this is overdoing it? What did I ever do to you?
Were you shocked? This is a surprise from your best friend.
Stop messing around. Explain everything to me. Even if I didn't care that you were with Toru, why did you go out of your way to invite me to the wedding? If I knew, I never would have come here.
Obviously, it's to get revenge against you.
Revenge?
Don't you remember? My boyfriend from when we were in college?
What was his name? Naoya?
And you remember when he dumped me, don't you?
That's right. Didn't he say that he fell in love with someone else?
Well, that someone else was you.
What?
He said he had feelings for you, and that's why he broke up with me.
But I never dated him. He never even told me any of that.
Right at that time, you started dating some other guy, so he probably gave up. I wanted you to have a taste of the humiliation I felt at that time.
Are you telling me that that's the reason why you're pulling such a cruel prank like this?
That's right, because you stole my boyfriend.
I didn't steal anything.
What's the difference? Now that it's all opened up, I can tell you this. Almost immediately after your accident, Toru and I started seeing each other.
Does that mean when you were messaging me that day?
Yep, he was sitting right next to me. We were both laughing hysterically. Not only did you have your husband stolen, but I got to watch your entire life fall apart. It was the best.
I could have never imagined that Kozue was holding such a deep grudge against me, and I couldn't wrap my head around her reasoning. Then, this time, I got a message from Toru.
Yo, are you shocked?
Now you were messaging me?
Darn it, you already spoke to Kozue, huh? Well then, no need for me to explain the situation.
I guess not. Judging by your attitude, I guess you knew that I was going to be coming here today.
I told her that it would be awkward, but Kozue insisted that no matter what, she wanted you to come and wouldn't listen to me.
Is that so? How kind of you to oblige.
Are you mad at me?
Well, yeah, but you know what? I don't care anymore.
Oh, come on, don't be so sad. Just because you're so useless in your current state, I'm sure something good will come to you eventually.
You're right. I'm sure I'm going to be in a very good mood very soon. I was not expecting to be faced with the birth of the most awful couple in the history of all weddings. Although, in some ways, I think they're a perfect fit for each other. I ended up staying and participating in the reception. To be honest, I wanted to go home, but I didn't want them to think that I was running away and that they won. So I decided to stand my ground and stay until the after party. Once the reception was over and about 1 hour into the after party,
Yoshiko, were you surprised? Are you mad?
yeah, you're right, you really got me.
Serves you right.
Kozue had already had quite a bit to drink, and unaware of all of the people around us, she started harassing me. As for Toru,
Well, I knew that I was right to divorce you back then. No thank you to taking care of a parasite in a wheelchair.
he started to chime in. The two of them stood there side by side, and even though it was their own wedding, they both decided to focus on me. What a similar couple.
So anyway, what are you doing these days? Are your parents taking care of you? I bet you don't even have a job.
Right as they started talking about my life, I heard a man's voice from behind me.
Nope, she's an affiliate of a very famous blog and earning plenty. I believe her annual salary is well over $100,000 already.
This voice was coming from my current boyfriend, Mr. Akira. He was 3 years older than me and was the CEO of a startup business. With his arrival, the women around me started causing a commotion. But that was no surprise. Mr. Akira was objectively good looking from every angle, and there was no denying his presence. I felt like it was time for my own great reveal, so I had asked him to head over around this time. I guess he came all the way here to the after party so that he could push my wheelchair for me. And that's right, everything he said is actually true. I'm currently earning 3 times what I used to make as an employee of another company. It was something that I always wanted to do, and my injury was the perfect time for me to put my all into it. The reason why I met Mr. Akira was when I joined a dinner party that I was invited to through work. Since I was in a wheelchair, I didn't want to be in the way, so I stayed on the outskirts of the venue. When Mr. Akira noticed me and was kind enough to come talk to me. He was a really good listener, and I found myself telling him everything about how I ended up in a wheelchair and how that led to my divorce. As if it was his own situation, Mr. Akira was livid, and he made me feel seen. It turns out that Mr. Akira's cousin also had a disability in his arms, and because of that, he was bullied as a kid, and so he was extremely understanding of my situation. That made us both open up to each other, and it didn't take long for us to get closer and start a relationship. When the two of them realized that in both my professional and my personal life, I was in a pretty great situation, they both looked disappointed. I could have left right there and then, but why not have the two of them pay for what they tried to do to me? Knowing that I had the attention of everybody around us, I asked Kozue in a loud voice, "Oh yeah, have you already returned the debt that you got yourself into because of your addiction to escorts? Wasn't it like $200,000 or something like that?"
How do you know about that?
You and we have a lot of mutual friends, don't we? I heard that through the grapevine about a year ago. I didn't say anything because I figured you didn't want to talk about it, but if this is what you're going to do to me, well... I had heard that she got hooked on escorts and dug herself into a deep debt. When he heard this, Toru glared at Kozue through thin eyes.
Hey, what is this about? I don't know anything about this!
However, in reality, this guy had no right to say anything either. But since it seems like nobody was going to speak up, I decided to do the honors. Oh, you've got some debt of your own, don't you? Between gambling at the casino and gambling at the horse races, I'm pretty sure it was around the same, $200,000.
What is she talking about?
There's no point in playing dumb. I heard everything from your older brother. After you threw me away and disappeared, he came all the way to my house to apologize to me. Your parents are garbage, just like you, and ignored me. But it looks like your brother was the only decent one in your family. He wanted to make me feel just a little bit better, so he told me everything. The whole venue started buzzing. That was no surprise, considering that the bride and groom discovered a combined debt of $400,000 between the two of them on their wedding day, and now everybody knew about it too. However, the two of them didn't seem to notice what was going on in the venue because...
Why don't you explain this to me? I married you because you said that you had a mountain of assets from your parents' inheritance.
Of course, that was all gone a long, long time ago. That's why I married you, since you're working at a pretty decent company and making a decent salary.
As the two of them were yelling at each other, I had lit the fire to the match between the two of them. Before the entire place burned down, Mr. Akira and I snuck out of the venue and left.
Well, a couple with a combined debt of $400,000 and both with such poor taste as humans. They're a perfect match for each other in hell.
I know, right? If anything, I'm so grateful that he broke up with me. I guess that accident wasn't all misfortune. I got to break up with my trash husband, and I was able to meet the most incredible partner named Akira.
I would never think that I'm glad that you are injured like this, but I'm truly so grateful to the gods for bringing you into my life. I'll always be by your side, no matter what.
Yes, me too. Thank you. Our relationship continued, and the two of us ended up getting married. As for Toru and Kozue's path, well, that was a complete joke. They both wanted nothing to do with the other person's dead, and as soon as the ceremony was over, they went straight to file divorce. Apparently, they both tried to collect a settlement fee from the other, but neither of them had enough money to hire a lawyer. Everybody could tell that they were both guilty anyway. In the end, they didn't have to separate any assets or anything. They simply got divorced. After that, Toru started to send me messages like he was Romeo every single day, and Kozue herself said, "Your best friend is struggling and you're just going to leave her?" And I was getting messages from these two brainless scumbag idiots. According to our mutual friends, the ridiculousness from their wedding spread to both of their companies, and I heard that the both of them are now completely unemployed. In order to hide from the debt collectors, apparently they've both disappeared to who knows where. I wonder how their cell phones are still working. There's no way they're able to pay their phone bills. Well, who cares? That's none of my concern. At this point, this was past any feeling of resentment, and all I can do is pity them. My heart was already healed by true love, and I softly blocked the both of them. I deleted their contacts and decided to delete them from my memory too. With Akira's suggestion, we decided to build a custom house that was fully accessible and designed for a wheelchair. Until the house is finished, he moved in with me to my parents' house, and I get to live with my beloved parents and my husband. When I got into the accident, I never could have imagined that I would be able to live such a happy life as this. I'm not going to pretend like life wasn't hard and that I didn't want to give up sometimes, but I truly am glad that I chose to continue living. I'm looking forward to my life ahead with my loving husband by my side.